What's going on? Welcome back to Know for a Fact. We've got an interesting video for you today. Serial killers have become a huge inspiration for TV series and films in the last few years because they seem so fascinating to people. Someone who cold-heartedly murders several people without any kind of remorse can truly be shocking. Through the years, there have been reports of murders and deaths at the hands of killers across the world. Their stories are now an entertainment medium for the curious public. In this list of serial killer facts, let's dive deep into the minds of these normal people turned psychopaths. First up, a serial killer's motive can be categorized into 4 reasons. When a serial killer kills, there's usually an underlying motive. Of course, no one just murders someone without getting something out of it. According to research, serial killers have 4 motives. First, those who kill to fulfill a mission. These are those who want to rid the world of prostitutes or those curing societal ill. Second, those who are hedonistic. Killers who just find pleasure from killing. Third, visionary murderers. These are killers who feel like they are called by the devil or God to do the deed. And lastly, the control-hungry killers. In January of 2019, Netflix released a documentary about Ted Bundy. He was a serial killer in the 1970s, and the documentary Conversations with a Killer, the Ted Bundy tapes, gives the viewers a glimpse of the crimes he committed. Research reveals that he's killed at least 36 women, but up to this day, there is still no confirmation for that number. Bundy's killing ground was within Washington, Colorado, Florida, and Utah. With all the trial proceedings, he was finally convicted of murder and was sentenced to death via an electric chair. The execution of the infamous killer was on January 24, 1989. This is just the beginning of all these chilling serial killer facts. Jeffrey Dahmer was a victim-eating serial killer. Easily one of the most famous serial killers of all time is Jeffrey Dahmer. No one dares to forget how he lures his victims from public locations to his apartment. Dahmer would put them in chains, drug them, and strangle the life out of them. Right after that, he would eat some of their body parts and the remains were left in his apartment. Dahmer did this in the 1970s until the 1990s in the Milwaukee area. On July 22, 1991, he got arrested because one of his victims got away from a possible murder. Finally, in February 1992, Dahmer was sentenced to a total of 15 life terms. This was after pleading guilty to all 17 killings. He did not live to spend all these years in prison, as he died in 1994 due to prison beatings. A peach orchard gave away serial killer Juan Corona. Juan Corona was from Yuba City, California. One would not suspect him as a serial killer, as he lives a normal life in the city as a farm labor contractor. However, on May 26, 1974, Corona got arrested because of the bodies found in an orchard. Neighbors near that orchard reported to the police that there was some kind of suspicious activity in the area. All evidence led to Juan, and he was finally convicted in 1973. His final sentence was life conviction without the possibility of parole. He never admitted the crime but was seen as guilty by the court. In a 2011 hearing, Corona finally admitted to the crime of stabbing all 24 workers to death while shooting the 25th victim. According to him, his victims were alcoholic trespassers on the orchard. A police officer turned serial killer. Joseph James DeAngelo was a police officer before he did a series of rapes, killings, and assaults in the 1970s until the early 1980s. To date, he has a total of 13 confirmed victims. He moved from one country to the next without being apprehended for the crimes he committed. On April 24, 2018, DeAngelo was arrested and he pleaded guilty to 13 counts of special circumstances and murders. Detectives of the case traced back all evidence to him because of a public genealogy website, as well as the DNA samples from his car and trash. Since he pleaded guilty, he will not be facing the death penalty. However, 11 life sentences wouldn't give him any kind of light for parole as well. All these serial killer facts just prove that truth will surface no matter how long it takes. A crawlspace convicted a party clown serial killer. John Wayne Gacy was a construction company owner. But he also did side jobs as a party clown for children, as this is where he gets to abduct young boys and men. Gacy lured them to his house, and it was where he performs his killing fantasies. On December 21, 1978, Gacy was arrested because the remains of his victim were found in his house's crawl space. After 16 years, he was convicted of 33 counts of murder and sentenced to the death penalty via lethal injection. His execution took place on May 10, 1994. Talk about clowning around. Next up, the Grim Sleeper serial killer. Somewhere between the 1980s to the 2000s, Looney David Franklin Jr. was out targeting drug addicts and prostitutes in downtown Los Angeles. He had his nickname, the Grim Sleeper, because authorities believe that he stopped all the murders for at least a decade before doing another murder spree in the early 2000s. Franklin was married with 2 children, and he was a former garage attendant and a city sanitation worker. But nothing lasts forever, as he was arrested by the police on July 7, 2010, after his DNA was matched to a series of killings. Because of all 10 victims, he got a death sentence, but he died in prison. Did you know that Samuel Little was a traveling serial killer? Studies say that there's a slim chance that serial killers would switch from one area to another to have their kills. But Samuel Little is another story. He was a nomadic serial killer from the 1970s until 2005. After he left Ohio in the 1950s, he traveled around the U.S. committing crimes. Some of his killing locations were Arkansas, Georgia, Arizona, Florida, Mississippi, South Carolina, Texas, Maryland, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Louisiana. In an interview with the FBI, he admitted to over 93 murders, but he was only convicted with 8. Little's targets were often vulnerable women who were drug addicts and prostitutes. He would punch them first, stun them, and then strangle them to death. Since there were no stab marks or bullet wounds to his victims, most of the kills he did were said to just be drug overdoses or accidents. Little pleaded guilty and was given a life sentence first before getting an additional 4 life sentences. But he did not get to see any of those years, as he died in 2020 while serving his sentence. Here's an interesting fact. One serial killer kept a journal of his murders. Randy Stephen Kraft murdered most of his victims in Michigan, California, and Oregon from the 1970s until the 1980s. His targets were young hitchhikers with military backgrounds. On May 14, 1983, he was arrested by the California Highway Patrol when they found a dead body in his passenger seat. Plus, they also found a notebook in his briefcase containing all his killings. The notebook also had details for all the murders of at least 60 people. During his trial, he was convicted of at least 16 murder counts and was sentenced to the death penalty. Kraft is currently at the San Quentin State Prison awaiting his execution date. Rounding off our list of 10 serial killer facts takes us to the Night Stalker serial killer. One of the most interesting things in this list of serial killer facts is that there are also murderers linked to Satanism. Richard Ramirez had a fascination with Satanism, and this led him to do horrible things in his lifetime. During the 1980s in California, he stalked unlocked doors and windows at night in the neighborhood. He looked for women victims, but he shot men that he encountered while looking for his main targets. Most of his victims ranged from 9 to 83 years old. On August 31, 1985, he was captured by a mob of Los Angeles citizens before he got arrested by the police. Ramirez was convicted for at least 13 murders, but another killing in San Francisco gave him a spot on death row. In 2013, he died due to cancer at the San Quentin State Prison while waiting for his execution. Thanks for watching. We hope you learned something new today. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our future videos. See ya!